Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our daily news analysis. So, we are referring to the Hindu newspapers Delhi edition. Now, these are the topics that I have identified for our examination. So, my focus is Mains 2022. In fact, we also have a program known as Mission Mains 2022. So, you can see our videos on this topic. So, we are discussing 5 questions that are most expected, and we are strictly going by the previous years. So previous years, we are using that analysis and then framing the questions. Now coming to the first news. So front page. So SpiceJet gets DGCA notice for safety lapses. Right, lot of incidents have taken place. You would have seen in the social media also. So the regulator for the aviation sector. So which agency is responsible? The Directorate General of Civil Aviation. I'm giving to you this homework. Is it a statutory body or a non-statutory body? Okay, so we get about this thing. We get to know about this. And I was thinking, so one is about regulation of aviation safety within the country. The other thing could be, like internationally speaking, because the flights travel globally, so there has to be some sort of a global norm. So that is provided by the Chicago Convention on International Civil Aviation. Very important from the point of view of pre-examination, right? So we have this. So this provides for the constitution of the International Civil Aviation Organization, which is a specialized agency of the United Nations. Again, important. Now, where is it based? It is based out of Montreal in Canada. Okay, and what all things it has done? So one is the formation of the ICAO. So this institution, beyond this, it provides for rules of airspace, aircraft registration, safety, security, and sustainability. Now, is India a member of this? Yes, right. So India has ratified this agreement. So this is one thing. Then typical Raipur police declare TV anchor and absconder. So yesterday I told you about the need for police reforms. So from that light, you can take it up. Okay, here also I was thinking with reference to aviation. So I have mentioned that in the prior sections that aviation sector reforms. So what reforms are required? What are the issues and challenges with the aviation sector? That is one thing we can prepare. Then from the point of view of disaster management, since the number of incidents of this nature has taken place, so just in case UPSC decides to give a twist, we don't really expect, but if it decides, so norms with reference to aviation safety from the point of view of disaster management and mitigation. Now both of them would come under the General Studies paper 3. Now coming to the editorial and opinion section. So one we have with reference to hate crime and punishment. So I'm not taking this up. It's repeatedly covered. Then this article, a no to pharma freebies, a yes for public good. So recently a judgment was passed by the Supreme Court. So the recent Supreme Court judgment. So it is about doctors. Doctors, as we all know, they get some free things from medical reps, from pharma companies, to recommend their products. And naturally during this, there is a conflict of interest with the doctor, where the doctor may be obliged to give a certain line of treatment or certain drug because they are getting some freebies from some pharma company. So an ethical concern, applied ethics from that point of view. Don't expect a question from the point of view of GS2 here. Okay, we never know, but that is it. Just a second. Okay, now this is a very, very important theme. So words from Bandung to relive in Bali and Delhi. So this article is actually telling about the relevance of non-alignment. A very, very important theme. What is the relevance of non-alignment in the present context? We all know the post-World War, the world was divided into 2 blocks, and each country whichever country was getting decolonized, these developing and underdeveloped countries, they were required, almost compelled, to join either the bloc led by the US or bloc led by the USSR. India and certain other countries went with the non-alignment. Now, in the recent times, especially with the Ukraine war that has taken up, India is being compelled to take certain stand against Russia. Likewise, the South China Sea dispute, then the recent G7 summit that has taken place. And India is deciding to take a balanced approach over here. So India is being non-aligned. So that is what this article is saying. The words from Bandung. So Bandung is associated with non-alignment. So relevance of non-alignment in the modern context. Now I can add to this another twist, the relevance of non-alignment movement, NAM. So the movement that was formed from the Bandung, so its relevance in the present context, right? So that is a very important theme. Otherwise, this article is actually telling us about BRICS, G7, NATO. So what all things have taken place. So that's why I'm not doing this. AUKUS, again, Australia, UK, US against China, and China, Russia angle. So not doing that. So my focus actually starts from here itself, because this is all repetition. It's here that we want to focus. What does this author think? Okay. So it's basically saying that there are a lot of countries, even in the present context, who do not want to get into this conflict of the superpowers, China, Russia, and the US. They want to be non-aligned. They are independent. And India can take an opportunity and work alongside them. And these countries are large in number. They may not be economically that powerful, but collectively they are. And they are huge in number. So they have, because in United Nations General Assembly, when the voting takes place, each country, be it big or small, they have a single vote. So they have a lot of significance, and India should work with them. India should take them into confidence. India should lead. India must lead over here. Okay, so that is the context over here which we have to work. So when we do this IR in the mission mains, so when are we scheduled? So we are scheduled on Friday. So yeah, so tomorrow's this thing, I'll take up this topic. Okay. Next, I was very excited to see this article, but then it faded away, my excitement. So taking stock of 5 years of GST. So I was expecting this article is about an assessment of the GST, which it is not. And I feel given see, this is also taking stock of 5 years of GST. It has been 5 years. What are the pros and cons of the GST? We are having a GOM, which is looking into the need to rationalize the GST. So that is the theme. And UPSC has asked this question on GST repeatedly. So maybe why not one more time? And this time it talks about assessment of the GST. By the way, it's been quite some time. We haven't expected a question on these lines. We used to get such questions, but it has been some time, but we should still prepare. Okay. For instance, I can tell you Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, I was expecting an assessment type of a question. There are a lot of shortcomings that have come, but maybe because it is critical of the government, so it's not coming actually. Okay. So this is just focusing on the introduction of the GST, and is the introduction of GST inflationary or not? It is just talking about that aspect. So findings show that it has lowered inflation of food items and raised inflation of non-food items, right? So I think that's where we should stop. We really don't have to spend time over here. What is the methodology? What are the wrongs with the interpretations? We are not interested in that, right? So it's not our domain. Now it tells us about introduction, some terms we get from the point of view of pre also. So it tells that the purpose of introduction of GST was, the expectations were higher revenue buoyancy, lower inflation, higher revenue for the government, of course, higher growth, and so on. Now, higher revenue, I think it's very clear. Lower inflation also, it is clear. What does higher revenue buoyancy mean? So you know buoyancy. Buoyancy means ability to stay afloat. So ability to, not to drown, ability to stay afloat. Yeah. So when we say revenue buoyancy, when we use the term tax buoyancy, it means, tax is actually on your income or in revenue. So on revenue, certain percentage of tax is levied. So the idea of sometimes what happens is, let's say tax rate is increased to a very sometimes new taxation is introduced, and the thing is that when the revenue is increasing, it is not reflected in the increase in tax collection. It is not increasing. So the idea of this is GST is that when the revenue increases, the tax should increase proportionately or at a greater level. Now that can take place if more people, the tax base, more people are getting enrolled into the GST. So when we move from the informal to the formal, we will see this. Next is the expression known as revenue neutral rate. So revenue neutral rate means already some system of taxation was there before GST. So after the introduction of GST, the revenue should remain neutral. After giving all the exemptions that are coming under the GST, the revenue levels that were there prior to this, that should remain constant or maybe increase also. So that is revenue neutral rate. Next is this article, India EU Alliance, India EU Global Dynamics. Okay. This article is again not talking about India EU dynamics, actually global dynamics. It is only talking about one aspect, about carbon neutrality and the European Union system of carbon pricing system, right? So carbon pricing, yeah, same thing. Okay, so this, it is only talking about this, but I'll come to this. But let us see how India EU can be asked. First of all, we have something known as 2025 roadmap to 2025 India EU partnership, right? So we have this thing. So which all areas they can work together, India EU relationship. So overall, in that regard, a question can be taken up. And other thing is very important, India EU FTA, free trade agreement, and EU European Union is a very, very big block. India needs access to this market, a favorable access that too. So that will be highly beneficial. So this negotiation of this free trade agreement has been taking place for a very long time, but there is hardly any progress. Recently, there was this India EU alliance that took place. So some movement was there, some progress was there, but overall there is a dead end kind of a thing with reference to the free trade agreement. So what should be done to solve this problem? What are the issues and challenges with the FTA? Why do we need these FTA? So this is the theme that UPSC can take up. Okay. It can actually also ask about this also, typically of a particular topic, and asking you about it and what are the views of India and other countries. So that also can be taken up. Right. So you can actually prepare this also. So let me explain this. See, with this United Nations Framework Convention, so when this meeting, climate change meeting had taken place, there was a goal set that by 2050, the target was that by 2050, the countries should be carbon neutral. India said by 2070 we can do it. But European Union said we will definitely do it. We will be carbon neutral by 2050. We will be the first region in the world to be carbon neutral. And naturally, if EU has to do it, EU has number of countries within it. So all these countries naturally had to agree on to this. Whatever EU had said, which was a representative of this, ultimately negotiation discussions would have taken place in different countries over here of the EU. So as a consequence of this, the EU European Union Green Deal was signed. It came into the picture. Now, to be carbon neutral, so carbon neutral means that pollution, whatever, pollution is neutral basically, carbon neutral, being carbon neutral over here. So to be carbon neutral, that means the cost of production will increase. Naturally, you have to move away from polluting sources to non-polluting sources. You have to make a transition, especially in the energy sector. You have to find out alternate methods of production. You have to work on pollution mitigation. So naturally, the cost of production, cost of manufacturing, etc., will increase. So in EU, we should see the increase in cost. Naturally, regulation would also be there, so overall cost will increase. So anything that is produced in EU. Now consider this, that in a global world where everybody is connected, free trade is taking place across the world. So let's say something coming from China. We can add to this India also. China has a bad name with reference to pollution regulation. You just say, come to a country and do whatever you want to do. So in China, let's say China or any other developing country, the norms are pretty relaxed, right? They are relaxed. They are not really focused on carbon neutral. They are focused on keeping the cost of production as low as possible and attracting private investment. So naturally, the cost of production here is high as compared to China, India, or any developing country. So what EU has suggested is that if anything comes from these countries, then they will factor in the cost of pollution. So there will be a carbon pricing system, because the people who are manufacturing in USA, who are producing, they are paying, obviously they are spending much more to comply with the regulations as compared to these countries. So they will be at a disadvantage. So to compensate for that, the system of taxation is introduced. So anything that is exported or anything that is imported into EU, which they feel it is polluting, which it feels it is not complying with the regulations, so they will be taxed at a higher rate. So the idea is to bring in a level playing field. So to create a level playing field for the EU producers. Now, naturally, the developing countries, all these countries who would be taxed, those products would be taxed, they feel that they will be at a disadvantage. And this is up to them how they want to decide. EU, they have to prove as actually what system they are following, so they will be at a disadvantage. EU can make policies that are favorable to the European Union and discriminate against other countries in the garb of this system. So that is the problem that is coming up. So developing countries have a problem, and they also say that it will have to be proven, the legality of the system at the WTO, World Trade Organization, which is providing for the regulation of the global trade. Okay, so this is it. Now comes advertisements, the new rules to keep advertisements in check. One second. Now, naturally, from the advertisements, lot of wrong practices take place. Misleading advertisements, naming them, misleading activisms, misleading advertisements, bait, surrogate advertisements, Blender Sprite music, Bacardi music. Everybody knows what Bacardi is, right? So all of the surrogate ads and targeting children. So such advertisements are unethical practices. These are wrong practices, and there is a need to regulate it. So the Central Consumer Protection Authority, naturally, this should be a statutory body. So this body has issued guidelines to prevent false or misleading advertisements. Okay, I'm just stopping over here, and let me give you some context. So one way of asking this topic could be from the point of view of GS2. So need for if the question is about regulation of the advertisements, but if a question is framed with reference to ethics of advertisements, is it ethical or not? Misleading, ethical or not? Celeb endorsement, ethical or not? Right? So when all this takes place, so applied ethics from that point of view, again, a question can be asked over here. Then restrictions on advertisements from the point of view of constitution. So that also is there. It is like a restriction on speech, a restriction of doing commerce, so all of that. In fact, we also have advertisements that promote betting, and betting are being called as skilled games. So I don't know what will happen eventually. I mean, with the future of this nation that we live in. So yeah, so all the justifications are there these days. Okay, so it says that it will define a valid advertisement provided it creates a criteria for a valid advertisement if it contains true and honest representation of goods and does not exaggerate accuracy, scientific validity, and practical usefulness or capability. If you know about Wolf Gupta, who's getting a lot of packages, right? So this White Hat Junior, such ads were also there. Okay. So take prompt action then if there is a shortcoming, take prompt action in letting the consumer know the deficiency. So that is also, for example, if Maggie ad is there, they should transparently say that these are the shortcomings of a product, or it may contain these elements. Okay. So it tells us about then the issue of surrogate ads. So surrogate ads need to be checked, taken in, should be prohibited. So these should be prohibited, it says. Then the policy of advertisements targeting children. So the children are impressionable at a very early stage. Why don't we target children? So that is what the advertisements do. So they try to influence the child's behavior, and child can actually pester their parents and we want this, we want this. So here again, this advertisement should not be to promote unhealthy goods, unhealthy items. So such items should not be done. Then these exaggerated claims of milk additives, I guess it is talking about Boost, Bonvita, etc., having higher nutritional values for growth of children and memory retention and all those things. So these are not scientifically proven, and such ads should also not be done. So children can be influenced through advertisements fairly easily, and they are capable of making buying decisions. Right, so all this. Then it also says that advertisements that are targeting children, like having chips and all those things, so they should not take place in channels like Cartoon Network, channels that are dedicatedly for the children. So these are certain suggestions, and the author is pretty optimistic about it, but he says that it will be challenged from the point of view of Article 14 and Article 19, these restrictions on advertisers. 2 militants surrender in Kulgam, right? So this has taken place. Bihar CM visits Lalu Prasad in hospital. China hopes for fair probe in Vivo case. So what is the Vivo case? Something to do with money laundering. So Enforcement Directorate is playing a role. So that is what China has come into the picture. Right, arrest term ends. What are the conditions for the arrest term? How long is the tenure of these arrest members? Okay. Then we have some nominated members. So who nominates the members to the Rajya Sabha? So 12 persons are nominated. So these are the members. If you can have work prior idea on these personalities, that will be very good. Not important. Opposition plans to put up vice presidential candidate. Right, so elections to the vice president is going to take place. The powers of vice president, the chairman of the Rajya Sabha, that you should know. Ex officio chairman. MSP should continue till market becomes efficient. Okay. Yeah. So again, UPSC asked us a question about the relevance of MSP and how it is important for securing the welfare of small and marginal farmers. Something to that effect, a question was asked. Now, what has happened in this article is that, The Niti Aayog has said that MSP should continue till the time the markets become efficient. Now we know MSP it's a minimum support price which a farmers are supposed to get. So it says once the markets get efficient, then we don't need MSP. Now this statement has drawn the ire of the pressure groups associated with agriculture. So Samyukt Kisan Morcha, then the RSS unit with Bharatiya Kisan Union. So they are not liking this. So they say that MSP, they have been demanding that MSP should be there and there should be legal protection. So this was one of the contentious issues between the government when they introduced the farm laws. There was a concern that the MSP would be withdrawn. So they want MSP to be there and MSP should actually be increased and legal guarantee should be provided. Now beyond this article is telling us about the DPP, Deficiency Pricing Payment. So this is a scheme actually introduced in Madhya Pradesh by the name of Bhavantar Bhugtan Yojana. Right, so this is the Bhavantar Bhugtan Yojana. Okay, so under this what happens is that let's say MSP is decided for a particular crop and the farmer sells the crop at the market. So rather than government procuring food from the farmers are required to sell the food and sell the grains in the market. Whatever is the difference between the MSP and the market, assuming that MSP is greater than the market, the MSP minus market, so that is the deficiency. So deficiency pricing payment. So whatever was the difference, so that would be paid. So market price plus the difference would be paid to the farmer via the direct benefit. So this is the DPP schemes that the center has been pretty advocating. Madhya Pradesh BJP rules state has introduced. Beyond this, obviously we have the PM Kisan Yojana. Then the state of Odisha, I feel it's a better scheme, Kalia Yojana. And also there is a scheme of the Telangana government, forgetting Ritu Bandhu Yojana. Okay, British Prime Minister Johnson goes to keep going. So there is this no confidence motion that is taking place. Gotabaya turns to Putin for fuel supplies to Sri Lanka. Right? All those issues are there. Russia war taking place. Russia going berserk actually with Donetsk, Ukraine. Lot of shelling is taking place in civil areas. Afghan soil won't be used to launch attacks. So this is an assurance that is given by Taliban Supreme Leader Mullah Habibullah. Okay, so this thing has been given by assurance has been given by Afghan Supreme Leader, and we are also having this thing about talks taking place between Afghan and USA. So let's see what takes place if Taliban can be reformed. Seems unlikely, but let's hope so. Okay, this is the article that I'm going to focus over. Okay, so let's do this. So the RBI eases rules to boost forex inflows. Next is IRDAI. So this is the regulatory body for the insurance. So it says that these days, some innovations are being done, some tech-based innovations. So the normal insurance is there. So some additions like by means of data, like pay as you drive, pay how you drive, floater policy for vehicles, having one insurance for multiple vehicles. So such products have been given a okay by the IRDAI. Now this is again a statutory body. Inflation hits FMCG sector hard, says Godrej. So Godrej is a FMCG company. FMCGs are universally sold and rural market is very important to them. So in fact, this is a much better indicator than the government facts also, because they are the ones who are actually getting the hit. So FMCG. Okay. So what they're saying is that the rural growth is slower than the urban. So it is an indication of rural distress. And typically, when this thing takes place, you'll find more incidents of indebtedness of the farmer suicides. Then this is also an indication of migration, push migrations, all of that. Okay, next exam point of view, government releases tranche of the PDRD grant. So post devolution revenue deficit. So the 15th Finance Commission, the Finance Commission in general, it provides for how the revenue would be devolved from the center to the states, right? So it provides the principles for that. So post the recommendations of the 15th Finance Commission, in fact 14 provided for additional devolution. So post this, so whatever deficit would be there after introduction of the new laws, new rules for devolution. So whatever the deficit is there between the new regulations minus the prior regulations, so that deficit was to be provided. Right, so certain states will be provided this money. So this includes Meghalaya, Manipur, Mizoram, Nagaland, Punjab, Uttarakhand, etc. Okay, now coming to RBI ECS rules to boost forex inflows. And remember, I talked about this yesterday also. Measures that the government is taking for arresting the depreciation of the rupee. So naturally, India would want that more dollars come into the economy. So presently, there is an outflow of foreign currency. So we want more inflow of dollars into the economy, and that will lead to stability. So for this purpose, first of all, we have this fact, rupee had depreciated by 4.1% up to July. Then segments to elevate dollar tightness. Dollar tightness means shortcoming is there. It's not easily available. So dollar tightness with the objective of ensuring orderly market functions. Now, what is the RBI doing? So RBI is incentivizing foreigners, that includes the NRIs, to put their savings into India. Now, for this purpose, we have three types of accounts. So these are the different types of accounts. So I'll share this link. I've taken it from here. So they want these non-residents or Indians that they transfer their money to these accounts. And naturally, for this, it is easing the rules and regulations. So for these accounts, it is saying that these accounts will not have to maintain the stipulated cash reserve ratio, the SLR, right? So that is not required. So this is a great incentive for people to put their money, put their dollars into the Indian economy. Further, choice of government bonds. There is freedom with reference to the choice of government bonds available for investment under the fully accessible route. So this is being widened for the time period. So this is being done. And the norms for external commercial borrowing is also eased. So temporarily, the limit for external commercial borrowing has been doubled to $1.5 billion or more. Right, so these are certain measures. So we were saying that the government would take certain measures. So naturally, it will come from the RBI. So these are certain measures over here. Okay. Now I feel that you should know more about these NRE, NRO, FCNR accounts. So this is an easy table from where you can get an idea. Okay, so this concludes the session. So thank you for streaming in to our channel IASPrimers, and all the best for your preparation. Bye bye, take care, and all the best.